Imagine, if you will, a timeline of human history. On one end, you have 1800s politicians literally shooting each other in fields to settle arguments.
Right.
Fast forward a bit, and you got 1920s Soviet scientists trying to breed, like, ape-men super soldiers.
Yeah.
And then jump to the present, and there are roughly 70,000 sailors living in these secret nuclear-powered cities deep underwater. And all of this is happening while we sit on the absolute precipice of an artificial intelligence revolution.
It's quite the journey.
Welcome to today's deep dive, where you and I are going to explore this chaotic, bizarre, and honestly deeply philosophical trajectory of human evolution and civilization.
Yeah, we are pulling together some wildly diverse historical anomalies today, fringe scientific experimentations and just these really profound questions about where our species is actually heading.
Exactly. And before we jump in, it's probably worth noting that we're looking at some pretty intense polarized history today. I mean, ranging from modern social rhetoric all the way to international nuclear warfare.
Definitely a heavy list.
Yeah. So our goal here isn't to take any political stances or, endorse specific worldviews. We are simply acting as your guides, impartially analyzing the fascinating ideas and historical viewpoints presented in this source material.
Exactly. We're just looking at the data.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with the idea that our modern, quote-unquote, civilized world might not actually be as far removed from our primal instincts as we like to think.
That is a perfect place to start, because when you look closely at historical political violence, particularly in the United States, you realize just how recently raw physical dominance was a standard accepted part of the political process.
It's crazy to think about.
It really is. It wasn't just a side effect, It was the actual mechanism of power. Like, take 1804. You had the sitting vice president, Aaron Burr, shoot and kill the former Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, in a literal pistol duel.
Which is just, it's wild to visualize today. Two of the highest-ranking officials in the country taking boats across a river to just shoot at each other over an insult.
Right. And it wasn't an isolated incident driven by two hotheads either. The Code Duello was this formalized system.
Right.
Like in 1806, Andrew Jackson killed a man named Charles Dickinson in a duel. Jackson actually took a bullet to the chest in the process.
Wait, really? A bullet to the chest?
Yeah. And then he later went on to become president of the United States.
Wow.
And if you fast forward to 1856, you have Representative Preston Brooks walking right into the U.S. Senate chamber and just brutally beating Senator Charles Sumner with a cane.
Just right there on the floor.
Leaving him unconscious and severely injured. And the reason? Sumner had simply given an anti-slavery speech that insulted Brooks' cousin. Physical violence was basically the ultimate veto.
It's so jarring, because you contrast that era with our modern political and social landscape. Like today, if you look online or listen to political pundits, people say incredibly cruel, vicious things to each other all the time.
Absolutely. Constantly.
But it feels like people throw these modern verbal punches specifically because there was a total lack of physical repercussions. Back then, if you insulted someone's honor, you literally had to go stand on a lawn and let them shoot at you.
Right. The stakes were life and death.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, does the absence of that physical consequence actually make us less civilized in how we speak to each other?
What's fascinating here is the neurobiology behind that exact behavior.
Okay.
Because our social hierarchy used to be based entirely on physical dominance. You were a leader because you could physically back it up or, at least survive the attempt.
Right.
So by removing the threat of immediate physical violence from our daily discourse, we didn't remove the underlying human instinct for combat. We just found a new outlet for it.
So we basically just traded the pistol for the keyboard.
Exactly. But it's actually much deeper than a simple trade. The human brain's reward center, like the rush of dopamine and adrenaline you get when you destroy an opponent in a Twitter thread or a televised debate, that lights up in the exact same neurological pattern as it did for our ancestors winning a physical fight.
Wow. So our brains don't know the difference.
Not at all. The biological drive to dominate, to conquer, and humiliate an opponent didn't just evaporate because we put on nice suits and outlawed dueling.
Right, we just changed the rules of the game.
Exactly. The stakes changed, but the primal hardware running the system remained completely identical.
Man, if we are essentially just primal creatures trying to manage these ancient biological operating systems, it makes total sense why we have this obsessive, sometimes terrifying urge to tinker with our own biology.
Oh, to play God with nature?
Yes. Which brings us to one of the most absurd yet strangely revealing modern examples we found in the source material.
Ah, you're referring to the comedian and the Gararufa fish.
Yes. I love this part. So there is this comedian who've been documenting this bizarre physical transformation online, claiming he is literally working out so hard and altering his biology so much that he is evolving into a new race.
It's a very intense claim.
Very. And his method is just wild. He takes malaria pills, specifically anti-malarial drugs like chloroquine, and then sits in ice baths while Gararufa fish eat his skin cells.
Right.
And he proudly displays these giant bronze rubber-looking legs as the result.
I mean, it sounds like pure comedic absurdity, right? But when you look at the mechanics of what he is actually doing to his body, it completely explains the bizarre visual result.
Really? How so?
Oh, well, anti-malarial medications can alter the structure of red blood cells and affect immune responses. So he isn't mutating his DNA, but he is fundamentally stressing his cellular biology.
Okay, that makes sense.
Combine that with the Gararufa fish, which, by the way, don't just eat dead skin. They actually secrete an enzyme called diethanol that alters skin texture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you mix the drug stress with the enzyme, and you get this strange, leathery bronze effect. He literally thinks he is triggering the next step in human evolution.
It's basically performance art mixed with bodily mutilation. But, you know, the absurdity drops away really fast when you realize this comedic attempt to alter the human form shares a psychological root with some very dark, shocking historical realities.
Like state-sponsored genetic tampering.
Exactly.
Specifically, Dr. Ilya Ivanov in the 1920s.
Right. So following the massive loss of life in the First World War, Ivanov was officially funded by Soviet authorities to create a new species. Like, his literal goal was to create a human-chimpanzee hybrid.
Which is horrifying. But the logic here, as horrific as it sounds, was coldly pragmatic.
Right. They needed bodies.
The Soviets wanted soldiers that possessed the immense physical strength and viciousness of a chimpanzee, combined with the human intelligence required to follow complex orders and operate weaponry.
Just a totally wild concept to even propose.
And he didn't just propose it. Ivanov actively imported chimps from Africa and engaged in artificial insemination experiments with unpaid human volunteers.
Which is just a staggering piece of history to wrap your head around. But scientifically, it failed completely.
Oh, entirely. And the reason why it failed comes down to fundamental cellular biology. Humans have 46 chromosomes.
Okay.
Chimpanzees have 48. So when you try to crossbreed them, the process of meiosis, where cells divide to create reproduction, it completely breaks down because the chromosomes can't pair up properly.
So there's a hard biological wall there.
Exactly. Ivanov didn't understand the genetic barrier, so he was eventually arrested, exiled to Kazakhstan where he died. And in this bizarre postscript, some of the apes that outlived him were actually shot into space during the early Soviet space missions.
Wow. Just a wild trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, the ambition to tinker with the building blocks of life hasn't vanished at all today. It's just become incredibly sophisticated.
We aren't doing crude crossbreeding anymore.
No, we're doing precision genetic editing. Like, look at modern de-extinction efforts, specifically companies like Colossal Biosciences in the text. They're currently working to literally recreate the prehistoric dire wolf.
Yeah, and the mechanics of how they are doing this are incredible. They aren't just finding a frozen wolf and cloning it like Jurassic Park.
Right.
They extracted fragmented ancient DNA from a 13,000-year-old tooth found in Ohio.
Wow.
Then they combined it with genetic material from a 72,000-year-old skull from Idaho and mapped the prehistoric genome.
That is insane.
It is. Then, using CRISPR technology, they basically act like biological word processors. They cut out sections of a modern gray wolf's DNA and paste in the ancient dire wolf code.
So it's essentially a hybrid.
Yes. The result is a stockinger, fiercer hybrid with a pronounced mane that is actually currently being birthed.
See, it makes me step back and look at our species as a whole, right?
Yeah.
You have the political duels, the modern verbal cruelty online, the 1920s super soldier experiments, bringing back prehistoric predators just because we can.
Mm-hmm.
Are we uniquely cruel as a species?
That's a huge philosophical question.
I mean, think about a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
A grizzly will start eating its prey alive without a second thought. So are humans really a cancer on the earth, acting as this invasive parasite? Or are we just apex predators acting naturally?
Well, to add some nuance to that comparison from the sources, the distinction lies entirely in cognition.
Okay.
When a grizzly bear acts, it operates purely on survival instinct. It lacks metacognition, which is the ability to think about its own thinking.
Right, it doesn't plan to be evil.
Exactly. It doesn't possess malice, and it doesn't comprehend the moral weight of suffering. Humans, however, have the cognitive architecture to simulate the future.
We know it's going to happen.
We understand exactly how our actions will affect others. We can simulate the pain we are about to cause, and yet we proceed anyway.
So the cruelty is a choice.
Precisely. A state-sponsored program to breed human-chimp super soldiers feels like a violation in a way that a wolf hunting an elk does not, because the human action is calculated. We know the consequences, and we manipulate the system anyway.
So what does this all mean? If human beings possess this incredible, brilliant capacity for technology and science, but we're also driven by these intentional, sometimes malicious primal instincts, how do we protect ourselves from each other?
That is the ultimate dilemma.
It seems the answer presented is by hiding our absolute biggest threats where no one can ever see them.
Which brings us to the hidden world beneath the oceans, the ultimate strategic blind spot.
Oh man, the scale of what is hiding beneath the water right now is staggering.
Yeah.
Based on the sources, the current United States submarine fleet consists of roughly 70 to 71 active nuclear-powered submarines.
That's a massive fleet.
Yeah, and this includes 14 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines, which are often referred to as Triton subs.
Right, and to understand why they are the ultimate deterrent, you really have to understand the environment they operate in. The deep ocean is an incredibly hostile place.
Pitch black.
Pitch black. At typical operating depths, the water pressure is crushing hundreds of pounds per square inch. Light doesn't penetrate. Radio waves don't penetrate.
So they're just cut off.
Basically. And these vessels are covered in what are called anechoic tiles. These are specially designed rubber coatings containing thousands of tiny voids.
And what do those do?
These voids absorb the sound waves of active sonar, meaning a ping from an enemy ship just gets swallowed up.
Wow. So they run completely silent, they generate their own oxygen, purify their own water, and they can stay submerged for up to a year, just silently circulating the globe.
It's modern isolation.
And at any given moment, there are between 40,000 and 70,000 people living underwater globally in these fleets. I mean, 70,000 people living in the crushing dark, completely hidden from the rest of humanity.
And the firepower they are guarding is, frankly, apocalyptic.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Each of these Ohio-class subs carries multiple nuclear missiles. But here's the terrifying mechanical reality. They use MIRVs,
Which stands for
multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles. That means a single missile launches into space, and then the warhead splits into 16 to 24 smaller, independent nuclear warheads. And each one is capable of hitting a different city.
That is chilling.
One single submarine holds the capacity to alter the face of the planet.
And they are just gliding through the abyss, completely undetectable. It really makes you realize how little we actually know about what is happening in our own oceans, which pivots perfectly into an entirely different kind of hidden world the text brought up.
Ah, the extraterrestrial question.
Exactly.
Right. When you look at claims from individuals like Tim Burchett, who assert there are at least 5 fully operational underwater alien bases currently located in United States waters, you have to consider the physics involved.
Because it sounds impossible.
Right, it does. The reports describe extraterrestrial crafts that are transmedium.
Meaning they operate in the vacuum of space, our atmosphere, and deep underwater with equal efficiency.
But how do you do that without the craft being crushed by the ocean's pressure or tearing itself apart, hitting the water at Mach speeds?
Right, hitting water at that speed is like hitting concrete.
Exactly. The underlying theory from the source is that these crafts use metamaterials to generate a gravity bubble. They essentially employ something similar to an Alcubierre drive metric.
Okay, break that down for me. What is that?
So instead of moving through the water with a traditional propulsion engine, the craft distorts space-time around itself. It contracts the space in front of it and expands the space behind it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's encapsulated in a localized bubble of zero gravity. Because the craft isn't actually making contact with the water molecules, there is absolutely zero friction.
So no splash.
It can hit the ocean's surface without a single splash and travel at 500 miles per hour underwater because the crushing pressure of the deep is pressing against the gravity bubble, not the physical hull of the ship.
Okay, but I have a major pushback here, and I'm sure you listening might too. If you are an insanely advanced alien species capable of manipulating space-time and traveling between stars, why on earth would you choose to hide 3 miles down in the crushing darkness of a terrestrial trench?
It seems counterintuitive.
Right. Why not just land on the White House lawn, make contact, and say hello?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the uncontacted tribe theory.
Like,
Think about how human scientists operate when they discover an uncontacted indigenous tribe deep in the Amazon basin. We don't just walk into the village wearing synthetic clothes, handing out smartphones, and fundamentally shattering their entire worldview.
no, we act like ghosts so we don't contaminate the petri dish.
Exactly. We observe from a distance. If an anthropologist or a biologist needs data, they wait until an animal or a subject is isolated.
Right.
They tranquilize them, take biological samples, run their tests, and put the subject exactly back where they found them before the anesthesia wears off. To an advanced extraterrestrial intelligence, we are the uncontacted tribe.
Because we are a volatile, highly aggressive, primitive species that, frankly, still settles disputes by pointing nuclear MIRVs at each other and struggles with basic planetary management.
Precisely. They wouldn't want to formally engage with us any more than human scientists want to try and negotiate a treaty with a pack of wild chimpanzees.
That is a very humbling comparison.
And because human science has mapped less than 10% of the deep ocean floor, the Mariana Trench or the deep Atlantic is the perfect, undisturbed blind spot for an advanced intelligence to set up an observation post.
It's a crazy thought. We pride ourselves on our silent nuclear submarines and our incredible genetic engineering. But to a higher intelligence, we might just be dangerous primates playing with firecrackers in a closed room.
That's a very apt way to put it.
Which naturally leads to the ultimate existential question discussed in the sources. If we are being observed and managed like a science experiment, are we just living in a digital simulation?
What is fascinating is that the prevailing thought among many modern theorists pushes back strongly against the standard simulation hypothesis.
Like the Matrix.
Right, at least the way pop culture imagines it, like a digital computer program or a video game running on silicon. Instead, they propose something much more organic. The universe isn't a digital simulation. It is a highly complex biological program.
A biological program. It implies a system running code, but the code is made of carbon, proteins, and DNA, not ones and zeros.
And crucially, it is an incredibly messy trial and error-based program. Evolution isn't a clean, straight line. It's a massive planetary-scale algorithm trying out different hardware configurations over millions of years.
Kind of like throwing things at the wall to see what sticks.
Exactly. Look at the Denisovans.
The ancient hominids.
Yeah. Up until very recently, we had absolutely no idea they even existed.
Really, not at all.
None. It wasn't until 2008 that scientists in a Siberian cave found a single finger bone of a juvenile female dating back roughly 50,000 years.
That's a single finger bone.
Yeah. And through advanced genetic sequencing, they realized it was an entirely distinct branch of the human family tree. Not a Neanderthal and not a modern Homo sapien. And even more incredibly, just recently in 2025, an antique shop in Taiwan yielded a jawbone that a fisherman had dredged from the seafloor years prior.
Okay, wait. How do you go from a dusty jawbone sitting in an antique shop to discovering a missing link in human history?
Through an amazing process called paleoproteomics.
Paleoproteomics.
Okay. While DNA degrades quickly, usually within 50,000 years in warm climates, proteins trapped in dental enamel can survive for millions of years.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Scientists extracted the amino acid sequences from the teeth in that jawbone. Those proteins act like a biological barcode.
And it matched.
That barcode perfectly matched the Denisovan profile, officially designating the specimen Pangu 1.
Which is incredible. A piece of the evolutionary puzzle was just sitting on a shelf next to, like, an old lamp.
Literally.
But it highlights your point perfectly. The biological program is full of dead ends, branch-offs, and extinct versions of humanity. It required vast expanses of time, brutal mutation, and environmental pressure to slowly iterate and improve the carbon hardware until it finally produced us.
Which brings us to the crescendo of this entire evolutionary timeline: artificial intelligence.
Right.
In the context of a biological program, the AI revolution isn't viewed as some dystopian, Terminator-style doom scenario. It is framed as the literal next stepping stone.
The evolution of the code.
Exactly. AI is the ultimate unlocking mechanism for the potential that biological evolution has spent billions of years building.
It's the democratization of human potential. Like, think about a guy working the 6 a.m. shift in the plumbing aisle at Home Depot.
Okay.
For all of human history, access to high-level artistic creation, complex coding, or advanced scientific modeling was heavily gatekept. You needed immense resources, years of specialized training, or wealthy patronage.
You had to be the elite.
Exactly. But with AI, that barrier to entry just evaporates. That guy at Home Depot can go home, type a series of complex prompts into an AI generator, and bring a completely original, fully realized creative vision, like a novel, a piece of software, a symphony to life in 10 minutes.
And the economic implications of that leap in productivity are staggering. When intelligence and labor are synthesized by machines, the cost of generating goods, services, and innovations drops exponentially.
It changes the whole math of society.
This is where the concept of universal basic income, or UBI, transitions from a utopian pipe dream to a structural necessity. If AI generates total resource abundance, the state can provide a universal baseline of wealth to every citizen.
And if you eradicate poverty by guaranteeing everyone's basic needs, housing, food, medical care, you effectively eradicate the vast majority of survival-based crime. People don't rob a grocery store if the bread is free.
This raises an important question, though, and it's one you really have to stop and think about regarding your own life.
Okay.
The entire biological program of Earth up to this moment has been driven by the friction of survival. The fight against starvation, the battle against the elements, the arms race between predator and prey. That is what forced single-celled organisms to eventually become humans. The struggle was the engine. If AI removes the struggle for survival, what happens to the human psyche?
Right. Who do we become when we don't have to fight to survive anymore?
The program has always required balance. We needed the threat of evil to appreciate and defend the good. We needed the sting of failure to force the innovation of success. Without that friction, without the need to earn our survival, do we lose our evolutionary momentum entirely? Do we stagnate?
Here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to offer an analogy from the deep dive that completely reframes our entire existence.
Let's hear it.
Think of the 4 billion-year history of biological evolution on Earth, like the booster stage of a massive rocket.
Okay.
When a rocket launches, the booster stage burns incredibly hot. It is highly volatile, it consumes massive amounts of energy, and it inevitably causes a lot of collateral damage, fire, and destruction just by operating.
Sounds like human history.
Exactly. But the booster doesn't exist for its own sake. Its single solitary purpose is to generate enough thrust to launch the payload into orbit.
Wow. That changes the perspective entirely.
Are humans just the biological rocket booster? Is all of our messy, violent trial and error history, the political duels in the 1800s, the genetic tinkering, the nuclear submarines hiding in the deep, the daily struggle for survival, is all that just the volatile fuel required to finally construct and birth artificial intelligence?
That is a heavy thought.
And once AI is safely in orbit, does the biological booster simply run out of fuel and fall away?
It completely recontextualizes our place in the universe. We aren't the final product of the evolutionary program. We are merely the biological machinery that built the final product.
So to quickly recap this wild journey we've been on for you today, we started by looking at the raw, physical dominance of our past, where leaders dueled to the death, and how that ancient brain chemistry still drives our modern verbal cruelty. We unpacked the terrifying reality of human intent, where we use our advanced cognition to tinker with nature, from Soviet super soldier apes to using ancient DNA to resurrect the dire wolf.
The playing God phase.
Yeah. Then we explored the hidden mechanics of our world, from 70,000 submariners dodging sonar in the deep to extraterrestrial crafts using gravity bubbles to observe us like an uncontacted tribe.
Hiding in plain sight.
And finally, we arrived at the realization that this entire chaotic, beautiful, violent history of ours might just be an organic program designed over billions of years to birth artificial intelligence.
And that leaves you, the listener, with one final lingering question to mull over as you go about your day.
Yeah.
If our complex biological program was specifically designed over billions of years of painful trial and error just to birth artificial intelligence, then what is the AI's program designed to birth next?
Oh, wow.
If AI is just the payload that our biological booster finally launched into orbit, what is the next payload that the AI is meant to launch?
That is going to keep me up at night. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we will see you next time.